Hey guys, welcome to, you know what? Do you want to get a drink first before we start this? I feel like I need a drink.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Do we have anything here?
I think we got some scotch. Just maybe a little scotch?
Yeah, a little scotch. A little scotch. We're out, man. We're out. We're out. You ready to do gear tasting now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Welcome to gear tasting. Hey guys, before we get into some questions over coffee, I wanted to quickly go over a couple of books that I just got to take a look at. One is an advanced copy of a book from Mark Henshaw, and this is about a CIA, well, he used to be a CIA station chief. That was his real daytime job, and he's written kind of a mystery thriller surrounding some intelligence breach that was going on in Moscow. So I'm actually looking forward to checking it out. This was just sent for me to take a look at, and I enjoy reading through books, so I'm actually looking forward to this one. I love anything that has to do with some espionage and Russia and things like that. So, and then the other book was recommended to me by a friend. This was written back in 2006, and I decided to go ahead and pick up a copy. It's called America Alone by Mark Stein. I don't know how you say that. But so basically this is kind of a look into what would happen in the West if Islam and the way of life that they preach kind of took over and grew in the West. And obviously this was written back in 2006, so especially with what's going on in the media right now, I'm really kind of looking forward to hearing the perspective that this guy is talking about in the book. So something that I really like from the back cover, which I want to read, just a synopsis, is so, hold on, I'm trying to find the right paragraph to read here. Sorry about that. Yeah, so, but America can survive, prosper, and defend its freedom only if it continues to believe in itself, in the sturdier virtues of self-reliance, not government, in the centrality of family, and in the conviction that our country really is the world's best last hope. So I'm really kind of looking forward to hearing this perspective, so I will report back on what I think. So let's get into some questions over coffee. All right, so some questions over coffee. Start with Jacob W. from Twitter, who asks, what multi-tools do you use? What have you used in the past, and what should people look for in one ourselves? So I have used a lot of multi-tools. I'm not a person that carries one with me on a daily basis on my belt or anything like that. So if you're that kind of guy, cool, more power to you. But I just don't find myself needing a multi-tool on a daily basis. I do have them in a lot of different locations, and I'll talk through that. But just kind of a caveat up front is that I don't have one on my EEC. So, all right, so when I was younger, I first started out with this Leatherman actually right here. I've had this since I was probably 11 or 12 years old, and I was in love with this when I first got it, and it's kind of a memento. I still hang on to it to this day. And this stays with me in my vehicle. So I've always got this in just kind of a general purpose toolbox with some pliers and screwdrivers and other things like that. So this is just amongst my tools just in case I need it. Because I've always just liked the small diameter of the pliers. I found I can get into a lot of things easily with just a generic regular old Leatherman. But one thing I've never liked about this is you can see the way that this is made here with the metal where all the basically the tools hide. It can really kind of hurt your hand if you're really squeezing down on that. You know, it leaves an impression. So obviously other multi-tools have come along over the years, and you know this was, God, in the 80s, I guess, is when I got this. So Then I kind of graduated a little bit in terms of multi-tools. I kind of found stuff that I liked. I started using Gerbers a lot, and I think I've lost probably 2 or 3 Gerbers over the years, and that was, well into my late teens through early adulthood. I guess I had those, and I kind of moved away from Leatherman, went to Gerber, and really liked those, but then just like old knives I used to have, I lost the shit out of them, so they were scattered wherever in Texas. So if you have one of my old Gerbers, congratulations. And then I kind of moved to, I think as I got in the Navy and things like that, I really started liking SOG, and the power lock really appealed to me just because of the quick nature that I could flip it out and actually, go right into using the pliers. I always really liked that. That was just always a feature that I personally liked. And then the tool configuration I liked as well. And I've talked about this, I think, on a previous gear tasting, but these little pieces of metal here tend to come off when you're using it, which never really sat well with me either. And I even tried to upgrade to the newest version, and you can see I still haven't really worked that in as well, and it doesn't flip around as easily as this one does. But it's still got that same problem with that piece falling off, and I was hoping that maybe they would have fixed that by now, but they haven't. So, and again, what that's preventing is kind of the issue I brought up on the Leatherman, is that when you're grabbing this, you've got something that your hands are resting against, so you're not digging into those metal slats there. And I think that in the history of multi-tools, I think Leatherman was the first to the game, if I remember correctly. I think they held the original patent on a multi-tool, or what have you. Obviously, it's evolved quite a bit since then. And then I think around the same time I was kind of getting into the power lock, I picked up a Leatherman Wave. This was just kind of this was probably back in 2004 or 5 or something like that. I think I got one of these, and something I liked about this is the tools come out from the inside here, so this is always flush and flat, and it really fits nicely in my hand, and I just really appreciated that aspect of this too. In terms of locking mechanisms, that's another thing to keep in mind too when you're looking at multi-tools. So whereas this basic Leatherman doesn't have any kind of lockout feature, which means, if you're using a tool like this, it can always fold back in on itself. There's no actual lock preventing this from moving back into the handle. Whereas like on the Gerber, you have basically when you fold these tools out, it's got a locking mechanism here, so you have to actually depress this piece to release that back into the handle. And on the SOGs, they've got kind of like a pocket knife type configuration. So on this, you can see that basically gets locked here by this tab, and then you have to depress that lock to actually get the tool back inside. So that's something to keep in mind too when you're looking at these things. And then the Leatherman does have a lock too, but it's a liner lock, like on some tools. Like right here, that's a liner lock, versus the tools on the inside here. I'm going to drop the knife all over the place. So once you get these out, it's also got a depressed feature right there to close that back up. So something to keep in mind is just the nature of the lock feature, and what you're most comfortable with too. Something that originally had drawn me to Gerber a long time ago was that little flip out motion. I liked that a lot, but I also found as I started experimenting with the different multi-tools that I like that power lock feature even more. And then Multitasker kind of came onto the scene. I guess that was back in, right around the time we first started ITS, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, somewhere in 2009-ish, something like that. And by the time I got one, I think they were already on Series 2. So this is just, they completely kind of revolutionized the multi-tool market, in my opinion. I just feel like what they've done, not only with this, and since then, with just the sheer massiveness of the jaws and the plier power that they have, they've really just done a lot. And it's more of a AR specific tool, so more for rifles and shooting sports and things like that. That's a big difference between that and what was around before. And now you're seeing a lot of companies that have jumped on board with their own AR tools and things like that too. But I honestly feel that the Multitasker, and I'm sure Shane over there would agree with me, that they were the first tool on the market that actually catered specifically to the the rifle platform as a purpose-built tool. So you'll find things in here like a nut wrench for LaRue mounts. You'll find sight adjustment tools. That's a Castle nut wrench. Things like that are built into this tool. And just check this out too. That's damn near a full-size knife that's in this multitasker when you compare it to what I guess Leatherman released back in the day, which I can't even get this out right now. Anyway, let's compare it to the SOG knife. It'll be easier. If I can find it, right? So, do this without cutting myself. So here's what SOG has, and that's multitasker. That's a pretty big difference, if you ask me. So, at any rate, you're basically getting a full-size liner lock knife, within the multitasker as well. So, there's a carbon scraping tool and other things you can stick on different attachments. So cleaning rod attachments and things like that. It's a truly capable tool, but again, it's very AR specific. So that's just kind of a brief overview of what I use. And I have these in different locations, which I'd like to talk about too briefly, just because I feel like, you may think that, I've got, what is this, 7 multi-tools sitting around here. Well, I actually do have them in different locations just so I always have one accessible. I don't carry one on me on a daily basis, but I can always reach one typically within a minute or two just because of where I have them. So this old school one, like I said, is in the back of my truck. I've got this Gerber in my lockpick kit that's also in my truck, so I really kind of have some redundancy there. The Leatherman Wave is in my bolt bag, so I've always got that with me to grab if I need that. The power lock is always with me in my gear kit if I'm shooting or anything like that. And I switch that out with a multitasker just depending on what I'm doing. If I find that I'm not around my range box and I really need to have something to work on guns with, I will take a multitasker along with me depending on if I'm shooting. And then, like I said, I bought the backup for the power lock just to see if they've made improvements. They haven't. I wish I would have known that before I bought it because I probably wouldn't have bought that. I would have stuck with my original. And then, through the years, I upgraded my multitasker too. So the Series 2 stays in our toolbox here at the shop, so I always have it to work on guns with. And then, Series 3 is always with me depending on that. So yes, I have a lot, but they're always within my reach. So that's something to consider too. Okay, as you can see, it's a fairly loaded question. Had to prep quite a bit for this one. So Jacob F. asks, I've read your taste test on camping food. What do you guys use for cooking and dining while out in the field? Well, I can't speak for everybody else, so I will speak for myself, and this is what I've accumulated through the years of cooking and dining outdoors. So the easy question is the dining aspect. Let's kind of go over that first. I typically am either eating out of an MRE bag or I take this plate with me. This is a Sea to Summit plate, and I'll take this camping, and this is more car camping and things like that. I'm not really going to go lightweight backpacking with a plate like this, but I like it because the sides pop out and it gives you a kind of dish too. And then I use either one of these Snow Peak sporks, so either the larger size or the smaller stubby size, and I typically keep one of these stubby ones with me in my messenger bag that goes with me every day, so I always have a way to eat. And then I've also used in the past these Snow Peak chopsticks, which I really like. I'm a big fan of eating with chopsticks, period. I love Asian food and making sushi and things like that, so I've always got these chopsticks with me. I like them because the tip here gets concealed into the handle, and then they both fit on into this little pouch. So those are just a couple of things I use. Now the more loaded question, excuse me, comes for the actual cooking. So when it comes to cooking food outdoors, there's a bunch of different ways you can do that. So one is either with the typical canister stove, like a Jetboil, like I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with. But there's many different kind of canister stoves, and I've pretty much tried them all through the years, so I can speak to that a little bit too. And then there's alcohol stoves, as well as wood-burning stoves. So there's kind of 3 disciplines in my mind that I can think of. There's also kind of a tab fuel, but I don't really put that into its own subcategory or its own category. SBIT is the company that kind of revolutionized the tab fuel kind of market. It's very stinky. That's why it's in the bag by itself. It's kind of the bastard child of the cooking fuel industry. In my opinion, it just smells. There's nothing wrong with it. It works great. So, all right. So what I want to speak to, first I'm going to tackle the canister stoves, and I'm going to walk through kind of the alcohol stove stuff, and then I'll get into the wood burning stoves as well. So first let's talk about canister stoves. So canister stoves, it's usually a propane isobutane mix that most of them run. So this just happens to be Jetboil's fuel. When you go into an REI or any kind of outdoor store, you'll find different companies make different fuel. They'll typically call them different things, but the majority of it is really a propane butane mix, and that's typically what you'll find. Now, you will run into issues with certain stoves not being able to fit on certain canister types, so that's something to be aware of when you're shopping for replacement fuel canisters for your stove. So, and then that's one of the downsides, in my opinion, of canister stoves, is you're always dependent on carrying a canister with you, and it's taking up that size even when it's empty. So if you're backcountry camping and you want to leave no trace, which you should be anytime you're outdoors, you're still dragging around the fuel cans. They may not weigh as much without the fuel in them, but you're still dragging them around with you. And Jetboil makes two different sizes. One's the ginormous size, and then one's the other size. So this is 230 grams. This is 100 grams. I don't know the metric conversion, but that's that. So this is Snow Peak's answer to that smaller size too. You can see they almost look the same, but they, like I said, you'll run into issues with compatibility at the top there and actually fitting the stove. So the way these will work, and this is made by MSR, so I don't even know if this is going to work. We'll find out though. Nope. So Snow Peak does not work with these MSRs. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'd love to show you how this really works too. I haven't used this Superfly stove from MSR in a long time, so. All right, so basically they all have some type of fuel switch, an auto on, auto off, and you'll see the fuel start to go into the atmosphere there. And then most of them, most modern stoves have an igniter with them. Sometimes you can buy them without an igniter. So that's just an electronic ignition that actually lights the stove. So there you go. So obviously it hadn't been used in a while. So that's really the canister stove aspect. Now there's a bunch of different companies that make canister stoves. This is the Snow Peak version. It's a little titanium one. And over the years too, I've tried to I found myself going from largest to smallest as I've kind of had experience with stoves, and this is where I'm at currently with my canister stove. So I went from this MSR Whisperlite, which is just massive, especially when you tack on this, the base that comes with it to sit on, a repair kit, the fuel thing, which actually goes into the fuel bottle. So here's the bottle for fuel, which is refillable, which is another thing I'll talk about too, kind of interesting part of the bigger stoves. So basically you hook this up, and then this goes into here, and that's your fuel source for the stove. Obviously that's the biggest one that I have, and then it goes down to kind of something like this that can fold up pretty damn small. Then you also have to consider your fuel canister on top of that. But I'm honestly on Jetboils now, and that's where I've been for quite a while. We did a camping stove shootout type article back in the day, and we pitted canister stoves against alcohol stoves, and there was some stuff we weren't doing right with the alcohol stoves, and it really wasn't a fair comparison. So one of these days I'll get around to doing another comparison with all that stuff. But honestly, once I found Jetboil, I haven't gone back to some of these, but I do carry these with me for certain applications. So this right here is always in my vehicle. So I've got basically I think this is the Snow Peak TI cook set or something like this, but this is titanium. I've got 2 fuel canisters inside of there, and then the lid goes on there and gets put into the stuff sack, and then I basically take the stove and put it on top, and everything fits into a nice handy package like that. So that's my kind of on-the-go cook set, and it's titanium, it's lightweight. If I needed a canister stove and I was backpacking, I would take that same setup just because I've got 2 fuel canisters, a small stove, etc. The Whisper Lite is definitely a bigger stove. It's more for car camping type applications. I mean, I guess you could put it in your backpack, and the military was issuing those for a long time, and you know the military, they're carrying 100 pounds on their back. They don't really care about weight anyway. But you know, when you're talking about fuel bottles like this, those get pretty heavy along with the big stove. But the benefit to this is that it can take multiple types of gas. So whereas you're limited to the propane butane mix with this stuff, with the Whisper Lite, you can put in unleaded gas in this thing, you can put in white gas, you can put in kerosene, and you can also use propane like the isobutane mix in these too. So 4 different types of fuel. It's great to carry with you in your vehicle too, because you know obviously if you have fuel in your vehicle, you could always siphon that out into one of these and have your camp stove too. So it does put out a lot of you know, off-gassing and stuff. You can just look how dirty this is. And I think I used unleaded fuel the last time I used this too, so it gets pretty nasty. Then you've also got, you know, windscreens and things like that that it comes with. This was the first camp stove I ever owned. I didn't really know any better when I bought it. I don't think it's very good. It doesn't really shield from the wind. You have to put, you know, your own foil around it and kind of, you know, make your own windbreak. Then like I said, I moved to the Snow Peak, and that's kind of the extent of those type of stoves. Then I found Jetboil. So Jetboil is super quick. Not only does it have this, I don't really know what I think it's called a flux ring or something like that it has, but it's basically for heat dispersion. So once it gets going, and this is what I carry now, and I was gonna show you the complete kit here. This is what I started with, and I went to a titanium pot because basically I cook and eat in this thing. So if I'm cooking a backpacking meal or anything like that, well, obviously I would heat up the water in this, that, you know, it holds 2 cups of water, and then I would dump that into the backpacking meal, mix it around, and eat, you know, with a spoon. But, you know, I'll make hot beverages and things like that in here. If I'm making ramen or something, I'll probably just make it right in the Jetboil and, you know, eat it right out of the cup, and then just wash it out if I'm the only one using it. So then this little ring fits on the bottom, just like so. That pops out, hooks right up to your fuel canister. As you can see, there's really not much to it. You got the cup, you know, you're eating, your bowl basically is at the top or wherever you're heating water into. And then this is how I carry it. So I've got a, you know, fuel canister in the bottom. This is on there, and the lid goes on. So the lid I carry with me too, because it helps heat up the water faster when it's covered. Gets to boiling faster. There are a lot of utensils and different accessories that come with the Jetboil, but I was going to share that with you too. I feel like they're unnecessary. So it comes with you know, this thing, which is a protective sleeve to go on the bottom to prevent that from getting dinged. You can pull this off, use it as a measuring cup and a cup itself. Then there's the fuel stand, which is this type of deal here, and I feel like this is unnecessary. I've really never had a problem with it falling over, but you know, you put your fuel on there, and then now you've got a stable platform to basically heat your water on. I don't use this. I think it's just unnecessary weight in my opinion. I leave that behind. I've got some Jetboil cook utensils too that, you know, I bought at one time when I thought I needed them, and I don't use them anymore. And then this is a French press, which I have used before. So actually that's a different. So this is basically the French press kit that comes with it, since I'm a coffee junkie, and this is Questions Over Coffee. Might as well show you the French press too. So you put this together like so, and now put your grounds in there, and now you can French press your coffee and pour it out. So that is a cool accessory, and it really doesn't weigh that much, you know, to bring this with you. So I'll stick it in there too, and it does actually fit along with everything I just have in here. So that's definitely an accessory I roll with once in a while. Then there's also a ring that comes with this. So on the actual stove itself, you can set this on there. And I forgot to mention too, this does have an auto igniter on here too. And I have found that at least on, I think I have 2 Jetboils, they both are kind of finicky when it comes to igniting. I think all electronic ignitions are like that though. I haven't found one that's just like clockwork over and over again. But this is like a pot stand, so you fix this to Jetboil here in the right way, not the wrong way that I just did it. But at any rate, now you can set an actual pot to boil water on the top of the Jetboil instead of using the cup. So that's an accessory too that I never use. But anyway, it's fairly lightweight, especially with this titanium cup. It's definitely saved some weight versus the standard. It's still the same size, but that's what I use most now is the Jetboil. I have experimented with alcohol stoves, and let's talk about that briefly too. So all these run off denatured alcohol. You can find this at like a Lowe's or a Home Depot. And a little tip here on denatured alcohol is I always use food coloring. So I'll take some blue food coloring and actually tint the fuel just so I know that that's denatured alcohol. I don't like clear fuel. I always feel like that's really confusing when it comes to liquids. So I've always just kind of adopted that method of distinguishing that. So with alcohol stoves, you can build your own, which I've done in the past. And I've even wrote an article on ITS about that, which we'll link to. But these were made out of a Coke can. So basically you put your fuel in through there. You have to have a priming ring, like the top of a food can. And you put a little fuel right here, stick the alcohol stove on here, light the stove, place a penny on top so it covers the fill port, and now you've got the stove in itself. And then you can use basically something to, and I forget what I had. Oh, yeah, so I built this out of some tin that was just picked up from the hardware store and some tin snips. And that goes over the stove, and then now you can set your pot on top of there and cook with it. So that's a way of doing it. Then there's also this Fancy Feast stove method, which we taught at Muster a couple years back. So you just take a cat food can, a little Fancy Feast can, and a hole punch, and just punch holes in there. And now not only is this you put your fuel in there and light it, but you can actually set stuff directly on, directly on top of that, and it won't snuff out the flame. So that's an option for denatured alcohol or a stove like that too. And then you have some kind of commercially available alcohol stoves. One's a Trangia. This is I forget where it comes from, but it's a foreign stove. So put your fuel in there. This is kind of a way to control the flame up on top, this lid. And then you put it into either a base like this to cook with it. So you put your pot on top of there because you can't set it directly on a Trangia, which is what we did on that original comparison, which is before I knew any better with Trangia. And they are very good stoves. I was not using it the right way on that. And then there's also this one from Vargo. This is a little titanium one. So you open this, pour the fuel in. This has got holes in there. Then you set it in this, so that's your priming ring now, and you light that, and you can set your pot right on top of there to cook with. So that kind of brings us to a couple of fuel burning stoves, or wood burning stoves. And I reviewed this Honey stove quite a few years ago on ITS. This is kind of a flat folded stove. It's got a couple of different rings on it. This one fits on the top here, like so. Now you can set your pot on top of there, and you're basically just feeding fuel or wood into the stove and using it with wood. And I always kind of had this as a base when I was lighting it in the snow and things like that, just so it's not right on the ground. And then it's got a insert like this that you can put in different levels up and down, and you can actually set the Trangia stove right on there too. So this could be alcohol and a wood burning stove at the same time. There was a Kickstarter project recently that I backed from a company called Emberlit, and they came out with by the way, this was a UK made product, so I imported it from Britain, had to pay the high shipping costs. Then a US company came out with this project a couple years, maybe a year ago, and I haven't even used it yet. You can see the plastic wrapping still on it. I just haven't had the chance to test it out yet. But same concept, you're feeding fuel into the open port there, using it as a fuel stove, or you can put this insert in, which is already in there, to put one of the S-bit fuel tabs directly on top of it to cook with that method too. So I know that was kind of a fast walkthrough, but it still took some time. But those are kind of, in my opinion, the different kind of stoves you can get. I do recommend a little funnel too if you're filling alcohol stove stuff. But that is the extent of my collection of years of trial and error for stoves. Hopefully you picked up some tips from this. But again, feel free to ask any questions. I can review some of this stuff again too. So, Jacob, hope you enjoy the answer. Okay, so last question I wanted to answer, just real quick, and this is going to be a quick one, I promise. Comes from Jacob. Oh no, Jacob was last time. Clint from email asks, would the GoRuck plates fit into an Alice Pack radio slot? Any advice you could give would be great. Let me just show you, Clint, real quick. So I brought in my Alice Pack, and this is the 30, the 20, and the 10 pound GoRuck plate. The 30, fits in great. Honestly, it's still got room to secure it. I think you could probably also, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, you could even put in the 20. Hell, I'll put the 10 in there too, I guess. And just make sure that all secures before I say that. So again, this is just the radio pocket and Alice Pack. And yes, that absolutely does fit. You know, and again, in my opinion, weight should be higher up on your back anyway if you're going to ruck with weight rather than down below on your lower back. And that's one downside I think to GoRuck's packs. I love GoRuck as a company. I love their product design. I love their packs. I own quite a few of them. But I really wish they had an option to keep that weight up higher. And if I remember correctly, I believe that they came up with some a strap system, because in the interior of the GoRuck packs they have some MOLLE up towards the top, and I think they had come up with something to kind of lash in weight up high with some straps and webbing configuration, but I'm not positive on that, so don't quote me. But anyway, I've always really loved the Alice Pack to ruck with weight with, just because it's got this radio pocket that keeps the weight up high on your back. So hope that answered your question. Thanks. All right, guys, thanks for watching this episode of Gear Tasting. Remember, to have your questions answered on Gear Tasting, simply use the # Gear Tasting on any social media, and we will find your question and get it answered. Thanks again.